everybody, and welcome to a special bonus This Week in X, because actually it's not about This Week in X, it's about a few weeks ago in X, but that's just not as catchy as a title. So here's the jam. Back on November 4th, which was a few weeks ago, in the throes of X of Swords, a little issue came out of a new miniseries called Wolverine, Black, White, and Blood, which is an anthology-style title where the best creators in the world of X-Men and maybe beyond are going to come together and tell short stories in Wolverine's history where he just cut up some stuff. So we're just going to go back because we missed it, maybe you missed it too, and do a quick lightning round through this issue to talk about the three stories. I'm just going to kind of call out each creative team. Y'all can just go in and we'll just talk about if we liked it or not, and also maybe where it might be placed in continuity. So the first one is called The Beast Within Them by Jerry Duggan, Adam Kubert on art, and Frank Martin on colors. Tyler, thoughts on The Beast Within Them?
For me, I think this is really about Adam Kubert's art. I don't think there's a lot of story here, but I did enjoy the place where this story was taken place of. I mean, taken place. You know, it sort of happens within the really, really good Barry Windsor Smith Weapon X.
Harry.
Yeah, I thought this story was super okay. I feel like I've read 10 stories with Adam Kubert with Wolverine, like in the snow. So it's not for this story, but it just feels like another one of them. I feel like Ben Percy had Wolverine's X book start that way. But no, that's really, really pretty. I mean, Adam Kubert's a great artist. He draws an amazing Wendigo. But yeah, it's just kind of, it is exactly what you think it is.
Yeah. Well, look, I kind of like and dislike what Jerry Duggan has set out to do here. I, for one, don't feel like that the Weapon X program needs a lot of tinkering and inserts into it. It's such a striking story. We've already put a lot more structure over what Weapon X is, why it's Weapon X, X means 10, et cetera, et cetera. So, like, I don't need a whole lot more moments in there to be inserted now, decades later. That said, if anything has always sit weirdly for me about that story, it's this idea that, like, oh, we're going to have this experimental mutant that we just laced his bones with adamantium fight some wolves. Like, it never really quite tracked, especially because of what later authors have inserted with Wolverine kind of having like a kinship with animals sometimes. If we go back to Origin 2 by Gillen, he has Wolverine kind of, or when he's just Logan in the early 1900s when he meets Sinister, kind of just being one with this wolf pack. So it's always kind of like sat a little bit weird that they just have him killing wolves. So I actually think Duggan's impetus here to like show that they tried him out on other stuff is actually a cool idea, and I can give it that. That said, it's kind of just like a nothing story, like where nobody's ever going to go back and like, now that we've established in Weapon X, but you know Kubert to me sometimes can get a little bit overly loose, and I kind of like lose the thing that made his art so remarkable to me back in the 90s. But I actually think this is a relatively tight set of artwork from him, maybe because he knows it's going to be in black and white, so he's doing a lot more of the work himself in terms of like shading and implying things, because he knows that there's not going to be a lot of color laid on top. I don't know, but like maybe I would really like a black and white Adam Kubert issue is what I came away from the story thinking.
I mean, the female characters and the scientist guy is also looks very similar to Barry Windsor Smith version. Sorry, I can't say that properly. So BWS versions.
Yeah. Well, and I really like when people do that, because BWS has a very weird way that he draws faces that is so unique to him. And I love when other artists ape it. I think it was Ron Garney on The Return of Wolverine who like did an issue that just straight up looked like a BWS issue, which I was like blown away that he could maintain that for a whole issue. So I really like when people make a point of imitating BWS's faces and character builds.
I mean, the other thing I kind of want to say, it's not so much about the story itself, but well, if we're going to have Adam Kubert do Wolverine, so why not just let him do Wolverine on Wolverine's title itself? Like, don't distract him with this. You know, let him do the Wolverine series himself, and maybe have a fill-in artist now and then because he's not the fastest penciler in the world, but stick him there. I think we don't need to distract him or waste his time here, even though it's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of two minds there. Like, yes, would I like to see now artists of that caliber on the solo series? Yes, but at the same time, it's like, well, you got to draw him in with somebody, and he's a big name. So if you're trying to, I mean, if you're looking for somebody who's known for drawing Wolverine, that's going to bring people into this book, I guess you're going to get Adam Cooper. All right, so second one, I Shall Be a Wolf. Matthew Rosenberg is the writer. Joshua Cassara, who we are addicted to here on this program, is the artist, and this is colored by Guri FX. Tyler, what did you think of I Shall Be a Wolf?
I mean, for me, this is delightful. And not just because of Cassara's art. I think the whole spy deception thing that happens, that sort of revealed itself halfway through the story, is kind of fun. And yeah, I mean, the thing that really got me thinking was that maybe Cassara's art needs to be just colored simply, because I kind of think that sometimes Dean White's coloring on X-Force makes his work looks a little bit muddy.
Harry?
Yeah, I thought this was fun. I mean, I think it's kind of obvious with this kind of book that like what you're going to get is more kind of classic classic Wolverine stories, but this was like a very fun, well done, kind of twisty version of that. It wasn't like really groundbreaking in any way, but like I thought it was like a really fun story from Rosenberg, who I don't always love. And Cassara is amazing. I like him more with everything I read from him. So, and it's always nice to get classic Nick Fury. That's always like, I don't want like a ton of him, but when he's in a story a little bit, that's pretty nice. And he's got a good moment where Wolverine tells him to F off and all that. And this was fun. It was like a fun story. And Cassara's art was appropriately gruesome. Like the Hydra goons that get messed up in this get really messed up.
They get really, really messed up.
I'm looking at a page where a guy's like half of his jaw is just gone. I'm just like, okay, you are getting the blood in this. So yeah, this was pretty fun. I liked it.
So I want to touch on a couple things from there. First of all, the idea of the artwork, right? I do think Cassara is somebody who plays a lot in his art with shading and with maybe like ink washes or gray tones. And I think he actually does do that even on the art that's not going to just be black and white. We've seen it on the pages that Tyler and Fariha have bought from him. And so it's interesting because to me, I think of Dean White primarily as defined as a colorist who does a lot of white highlighting, because that's one of the marks of his color. But you see that Cassara kind of has that built into his style already. So I think a lot of the successes that I was attributing to Dean White to begin with on X-Force are actually just Cassara's style, which then begs the question, like, do you need Dean White on Cassara? If Dean White's bringing the thing that Cassara is already doing, which is playing with white as a highlight color, we could get really deep into the art stuff there. I did think the art was phenomenal here, as Cassara always is. I do think it was really brutal and fun. I also would echo something that Harry said about a young Nick Fury. I was trying to place this in continuity, and it feels like a relatively early Nick Fury. I found myself questioning, is this Wolverine like pre-joining the X-Men and kind of like searching it for clues? I don't think it really matters, but it didn't seem like the very grizzled Nick Fury that we have in like the 2000s. It feels like it's necessarily maybe kind of like Scorpio Connection era Nick Fury in some of the Wolverine and Nick Fury stories from the 80s and early 90s. And
He's almost cheery in this.
Yeah, he's like really glib in a way that Nick Fury is not always. And then the final thing is like, so Rosenberg always comes with twists, right? This is, if you want to read one of the best comic books written in the past decade, go read Rosenberg's 4 Kids Walk Into a Bank. You could teach a comic books class with it. It's like a textbook of greatness. And I feel like he did as much as he possibly could do in an anthology story here. But I just don't buy Wolverine having a bomb in his body as the kicker to the story. It's Wolverine. What is scarier than Wolverine? I just don't know if I like really, really worked for me, because I was like, yeah, there's the whole bit with the phone and then it triggers the bomb, which was all very clever, but it felt like it would be cleverer if it was just with like a character who wasn't Wolverine, who is necessarily much scarier than a bomb. But that's just me being Peter.
No, that's a fair point.
That's fair. Yeah, totally. I mean,
but it was really, really fun story.
Yeah.
All right, Cabin Fever. This one's easy to read. The creative team. Declan Shalvey was the writer, the artist, and the colorist here. Tyler.
I've always enjoyed Declan's art. I don't always enjoy his writing. In this case, I think it's okay for showcasing his art. I mean, it is really nice. In typical Declan's way, and the way that he choreograph fights and stuff like that, which I first I think that my first encounter of Declan's art was in his Moon Knight, which I love the action scenes that he sort of choreographed in that series. But the problem I have here really is with the use of red. I think that it's a bit of a miss here, and especially towards the end, because the red is one shade, and I think it's being used to denote two different things: blood and sunset,
light.
or light, from somewhere else, and it doesn't quite work for me. So I think that was sort of a little bit of a minus there.
Harry?
Okay, so I really like Declan Shalvey a lot, actually. I don't like his writing very much. I don't want to paint with a broad
brush. You guys are brutal.
I know. I don't want to paint with a broad brush. I don't, I feel like artists turn writers, you can kind of tell sometimes. And this story, while looks incredible, I think you can kind of tell like the writing is a little subpar compared to it. Now, where I differ from Tyler is that I actually like the use of red the most in this story, in the 3 stories, because beyond just being blood for just like effect's sake, I feel like it does kind of advance the narrative and show his changing emotional state when Wolverine gets more pissed. And it's not like a crazy groundbreaking thing, but it's just a more creative use of the color than what we got in the first 2 stories. So I didn't love this, but I didn't really love any of these, but I like this one the most. So good for Declan Shalvey.
Well, as is often my job here, I will somewhat split the opinions between the 2 of you. So I come down on the Harry side with the use of red. And the place that it really hit for me was when Wolverine staggers out of the cabin and he's got the baby in his arms, and then there's the light from the cop car on the back of the trooper. And the reason it hit for me is because he's clearly not just covered with blood there. It's meant to, as Harry very wisely points out, denote something about his blood rage, his state, his emotional state. Because it's not like there's like bloody handprints on the baby when he hands it off, and clearly Shalvey's in control of all of this, so he decided that. So that we have this like more impressionistic use of red on Wolverine himself in a way that's supposed to make us feel something, and then we have this very, very realistic where does the light fall use of red on the other side of the page, where like it's missing certain creases of the trooper jacket because that's how light would fall on the back of his jacket. And I think, to Tyler's point, I can see that it might have been nice to play with different shades of red. Declan already did that a few pages ago. So I do sort of question why, but I do think from a thematic standpoint, there's this idea of the 2 reds coming together because it's the officer with the blood on his hands of the people and Wolverine with blood on him. And like, it just kind of made it work for me in a way that a page prior to that it hadn't, because like the writing is fine. I'm not going to go after him the way that the 2 of you have.
He's a nice guy.
I don't know that I've read his Bog Bodies, which is really great if you like a real kind of like meat and potatoes sort of like double crossy book, which I think is very much in tune with this. But I think it really won it over for me because there's clearly thematic things that are happening here that maybe wouldn't work if you had an outside colorist, right? This is what you get when you get an auteur that writes and draws and colors their own stuff. You get like, maybe the colorist would have used 2 different colors of red, and maybe Shalvey really wouldn't have liked that, but wouldn't have had the time to get into that detail. We don't know. And so I think, to me, like I kind of just got a little bit lost in the romanticizing the craft of it to really like super care about if I like the story or not, because I just think that he managed to do something interesting with the craft. And like that to me is what these black, white, and spot color issues are. Harley Quinn has had a digital one this year, which has had a couple of terrible issues, and a couple of my favorite Harley Quinn stories that I've read in years, if ever. And I think that if this Wolverine title can do that same thing, which is have some terrible stories and some stories that really stick out to me as like, wow, that was a great Wolverine story, then we will have done our jobs here.
My concern is that just by nature of this, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but just, this being like a black, white, and, red kind of thing, is that it's going to give us very visceral, very boilerplate Wolverine stories where he's the best he is. Yeah, he's the best he is at what he does, and he's going to stab some guys and it's going to be red. And that's like my concern. But you're right that this is the one that seems like he's at least Chablis trying to do something different or trying to experiment, and that's what that's kind of the best thing you can get from an anthology, I feel. So yeah, I mean,
yeah, and the best issues of the Harley anthology were ones where the red was not blood, and B, where it just like took it as an opportunity to do something that wasn't just an imitation of other Harley Quinn. I don't know that any of these 3 stories got to a place where it's not just an imitation of existing Wolverine, but I'm hoping maybe that we can get there before this miniseries is over.
I mean, we can, if we look ahead at second issue, the writers, we have like Peter Claremont and Saladin Ahmed.
So Saladin Ahmed,
wow,
So
and his artist is Kev Walker, who is
Yeah.
great. I love Kev Walker.
Well,
Now-
and we have Peter's favorite artist on the next issue too.
Greg Land. Yes, I love Greg Land.
It's a joke.
Well, it's
No, it's not a joke.
It's my
He
favorite.
really
X-Men
loves-
Oh,
He really
oh my
loves
gosh,
it.
this is a twist for the ages. All right.
Well, look, this gives you reason to tune back in, friends, when that issue comes in later this month. So,
Oh my god.
thank you. Harry's like, I don't know if we're gonna get Harry back next week. He's so
Just to walk
shocked
out the
right
door.
now.
Yeah. He's like, oh.
You know what? I am curious what
quit.
a black and white Greg Land story. written
Right?
by
Don't you just want to
Daniel.
know?
Well, and
All
it's
right,
about
I do, yeah. You
and
got
it's
me. All right,
Wolverine.
I'm in.
And it's Wolverine, so there will not be the pea mouth, thing going on. So
Oh my god.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's our lightning round on Wolverine Black, White, and Red _1. Clearly worth discussing. And clearly we'll be back with the next issue when it comes out. So thanks for joining us for this special bumper edition of This Week in X.